Welcome. Grizzle Psychedelics Con, Grizzle Cannabis Con, back to back, the biggest doubleheader in all of Twitter, YouTube. We're doing it. We're doing it. Guys, thank you for joining. First off, I got to ask you, you guys know how we do it. Please show some love. Give it the retweet if you're on Twitter. If you're on YouTube, the thumbs up. Let everyone know, guys. We've got a stacked agenda like only Grizzle can do. Cannabis Con, that's at 1 o'clock. But right now, 10 a.m., it's Grizzle Psychedelics Con, and the lineup is stacked. Scott, talk to them.
All right, guys. So we got a good few hours. You got to buckle up because we're hearing from all the industry leaders about where they think the opportunities are. So we got a jam-packed agenda. I'm going to take you through it really quick. Starting off with Compass Pathways. Then we're going to Mindset Pharma. We're talking to Cybin, HAVN, PharmaTher, FieldTrip, and then ending it off with Atai Life Sciences. So once again, this is Grizzle Con. I'm your host, Scott Willis. This is my man, Thomas George.
Sir, let's go. And next up is, of course, Compass Pathways, George Goldsmith. George, thank you for joining us at Grizzle Psychedelics Con. Leading it off, kicking it off. Thank you very much. Obviously, we've got a wonderful agenda today, and we are very, very happy to have you kick it off. Thank you.
So happy to be here. Thanks so much for the invite.
Thank you. George, for those new to Compass Pathways, obviously not everyone knows the incredible work that you guys have done in the field of psychedelics. Could you give them a bit of history on the company and how you guys got into psychedelics specifically?
Sure. So we are developing psychedelic medicine, but we think of ourselves as a mental health care company. And the reason we do that is we just see the huge unmet need. And we experience that up close and personal. Actually, I've done it twice. Once witnessing alcoholism up close and personal, and just seeing the difficulty that creates. And then also, as we've shared, our son has really suffered with depression, OCD. Couldn't find anything that helped him. The more he was treated with existing medicines, the worse he got. The more we told our story to others, we realized everybody has a story. And there was just a need for innovation. And so we have far too many people, about 100 million, a third of all people who have depression are simply not helped by what's available. And these people are often referred to as treatment resistant, but let's be super clear. They are failed by our current state of care, and we need better answers. And that's what we're working on at Compass with psilocybin. Our psilocybin drug product is COMP360. We've just completed a phase 2 study. We're preparing to announce our move into phase 3, as we've disclosed. And really excited to be leading the way in psychedelic development for mental health.
We're going to get into COMP360, obviously, a landmark, landmark study, and we're going to get into the bits of that. One question I have to ask, and just that failure of the ability to treat those, that need to be treated. Could you talk about the societal shift we're seeing right now in acceptance of psychedelics as a pathway to treat these people that haven't responded to traditional therapies?
So I think what we're seeing is an openness to anything that might work, because it's just kind of awful for people. And we see this magnified through COVID, the side effect profiles of existing medications. They do work for about 60, 70% of people. So that's terrific. But what about those other 30%? And I think what's shifting is a real desire to look anywhere because the problem is so big. And I think psychedelics are proving to be some interesting signals. I think it's way overhyped, way ahead of the data right now, which is why we're doing these large-scale studies that need to be done. But I do think that people are open to anything that might help them, their family members, loved ones, friends, family, you name it. Regulators are just really open to anything that might help solve this big societal problem. And I'm speaking to you from London, but this is a global issue.
And just on that point, with respect to regulators, have we seen that? Is this something that regulators are saying? Listen, these these people are in need and we're open to fast tracking as needed, et cetera?
Well, we just received, in 2018, we received a breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA.
Yeah.
In 2016, we met with 27 member states here in Europe. There was it's been pushing on open doors, so to speak, in the sense of, look, do your homework, which is important for this whole field to get. We need to do our homework. We need to invest in the size studies that actually are required, that have been required for cancer medications, everything else. There's no psychedelic exceptionalism, period. However, no one is saying this is too weird. Why would you do this? You're doing what to whom with what? None of that. It's all, let's show us the evidence and let's move forward. The problem is real. It's big. It's pressing.
Fantastic. Now, George, on to Comp 360. Obviously, this is a landmark study. We got a great graph from your deck. Maybe
Sure.
we can,
Yep.
let's pop that
up.
So it's the largest randomized controlled study ever done in psychedelics. Could you talk to this? Obviously, this is a very technical graph, but you have a very clear way to speaking to this.
Yeah, look, so what were the questions? Before we did this study, we had studies that were done in individual centers. They were done by people who, were very, very good academic researchers, but they were done with lots of people who had prior psychedelic experience. That doesn't, what can you learn from that? How does it scale? So what we went about and we said, look, we're trying to solve a couple of different problems. One, we want to do a study across many sites, 22 of them. 10 countries, 7 different languages, training therapists in. So that's what this study represents. So broader than a single site, often run by people who really believe in this. What we wanted to do is to demonstrate you didn't have to believe in the power of this. You could just do the research and do the study and see where the results take you. Number 2 question, what's the right dose, right? Prior studies hadn't been comparing different dose levels. They had used as a small dose as an entry dose and then a larger dose, but they never really did the work of comparing across. And then the last thing is, how do we create equal expectancy? Because, am I getting psilocybin? Well, if I'm supposed to get a placebo, and that means I probably am going to expect that would behave differently. If everyone comes into the study, everybody gets psilocybin, low, medium, or high dose. Okay, we're equating expectancy. That's what we did. Here's what we learned. Providing psilocybin after people came off of existing medications, about 70% were on medications, even though they weren't really working for them. It was kind of a safety net. We all understand that. Everybody came off of all the prior psychological or antidepressant medicine. They were then prepared for this with a therapist using our proprietary model of care and therapy that we've developed and reviewed with FDA. They get a single dose, 110/25. And the day after, the blue line at the bottom here, an immediate response, not waiting 6 weeks for an SSRI to see if it works or not before you have to figure out if you need to increase the dose. Day 1, immediate benefit. And then you have this continued model of benefit all the way out to 12 weeks. It wasn't powered to be statistically significant at that point. We were looking at 3 weeks, and we had an amazing difference between the low dose, the 1 milligram we were using as a comparator, and the 25. The 10 sort of was a confusing dose, really. We may want to continue to look at that if we ever do redosing, but we have a very clear winner here, just looking at the graph of 25. Single dose, huge difference at 3 weeks, maintains out to 12 weeks for many patients, and we're doing a long-term follow-up. We'll report out later in the year, all the way to 6 months. So,
and George, can I ask a question just on that specifically? So, they're taking the 25 milligram dose. We're seeing it the most effective. And when would the next? And that's in combination with a therapist. This is the session, right. And in all the different countries that you say, like this is truly a global. This is the true like
Europe, US, Canada.
Yeah, and then when would the next dose be? Just so I understand how should a patient
focus is. So our focus is a new model of psychiatry. Right now, people take pills day in, day out.
Yeah.
What if we could view this almost more like we see in other areas, perhaps cancer, where you actually have a dose, you manage to remission. So these people are responding. Some of them, majority of them are actually in remission as well. No sign of depression. And how do you keep them there? So our goal here is to get people well and keep them well, and not to be just kind of giving doses again and again and again just to protect them, but to really have it be based on some of our technology platform we'll cover later on in the day or in this conversation. But so right now, this is just with a single dose. We needed to demonstrate how long would a single dose last so that we could then look at what would other dosing look like if someone declines and needs a booster, if you will. So these are all questions that are going to be looked at in our next phase, probably, as we're finalizing that. But this is a single dose.
Could we talk to the next? We have another slide that you just with respect to how we think about the responders have durable.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
So this is a really interesting slide. For me, it's not the primary endpoint that we publish, but this is something we've been sharing. And what we have here are three different views, three different measures of the patients. We're looking only at the 25 milligrams. So we're separating. Green line is the people who did not respond. Blue line is the people who did have a significant decline in their depression symptoms. What we see, first slide kind of just corroborates that. It's people's assessment of their own depression for the last 7 days. And so you see blue line goes down, stays down out to 12 weeks. This next graph in the middle is really interesting. This is what payers pay attention to a lot, which is the quality of life. Do I need more help in my life? Do I need more support? How's my sleep? A variety of different things. How active am I? And what we see here on the blue line is at 3 weeks, we only measured this twice or 3 times, baseline, week 3, 3 months out. What we see is that the green line, people are not doing well and they could decline over to 12 weeks. What we see in the blue line, the people who had this 125 milligram under therapeutic support, they went out, and what we have is they're completely behaving like anybody, normal person, healthy person in the population. Their life is different, really different.
Incredible.
And then the last thing is a really interesting piece. So what we see is symptoms of depression. Often what we're doing is measuring symptoms of depression, sadness, sleep disruption, eating, all those different things. What we decided to look at is, what about positive ideas? It's not just the absence of bad, depression or sad ideation. It's like, are there positive thoughts? And what we saw here, we only measured this at day 2 and day 3, or week 3, it was exploratory. But what we see is that people not only have fewer depressed symptoms, but they actually have positive affect. They're thinking positively, they're optimistic. A person in a prior study at Robin Carr Harris at Imperial, a few weeks after he was in the initial study that Robin did, he said, I had this weird feeling. I was trying to figure out what it was. And he said, I thought about it. And then I realized it was optimism. I hadn't run into that for a long time, right? So this idea not only of reducing negative symptoms, but actually enhancing people's well-being, their engagement with their life, and positive thoughts. That's a different model. This isn't just an antidepressant. This really connects people to their lives and improves their sense of well-being.
Now, George, just obviously, we've got a couple, last minute and a bit, but key points here. Could you touch to, we'll talk about technology. We don't need the slide up. We'll just talk to technology, and then next steps for Comp 360.
Sure. So in terms of the kind of what we're doing with technology is we're creating a precision, predictive, and preventative model. We're using technology and recording all the sessions, audio, video, putting them into machine learning, seeing how do people's way of talking about their life experience change. Can that help us predict relapse? So there's a huge amount of research there. We're building apps supporting patients, but also helping therapists be better, not only in training therapists, but to really help them be better. What's next for us is to develop all of that, take it into phase 3. Yeah. As I've disclosed prior, we are going to be disclosing what that phase 3 looks like over the summer. And Then we're locked and loaded. We've been ready to start executing phase 3. We've been planning that for quite a while, and it's getting that launched this year, second half, as we've disclosed. So that's going to be a bigger, more even kind of broader study. And what's super important for everybody to end on, the prior data that I showed, 93% of the people who were in that study had their first psychedelic experience with this. So this isn't about people who've had prior experiences. It's about for people who really are suffering with mental health issues, may never have had a psychedelic experience, but what we're doing is actually changing mental health through the development of these medicines and therapy models.
George, thank you so much. That was an incredible, like, top down view of the industry, how COMP360 is changing lives, and look forward to hearing about the next steps for phase 3, and we'll be back for Psychedelics Con, and there'll be a lot more to discuss in November. Thank you very much.
Sure will. Thanks so much for your time, energy. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, George. All right, everyone, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Mindset Pharma.
All right, we got Mindset Pharma, James Lanthier. Thank you for joining Grizzle Psychedelics Con Edition 2022 June.
Thank you for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no, appreciate it. And always a pleasure. You've been here since the original Psychedelics Con, and the evolution has been incredible. Just these three, conferences away. We're going to talk into that. We're going to get into the details of that. But first of all, for those who don't know Mindset, how you guys fit into the psychedelic landscape, where the company sits, and specifically how you guys think about next generation psychedelic drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mindset's a biotechnology company that is focused on really leveraging the capabilities of psychedelic drugs in order to really create new optimized psychedelic and non-psychedelic medications for central nervous system disorders that, where you have patient groups with unmet needs. So really, when we started Mindset, our point of view was that first generation drugs like psilocybin were, a great proof of concept for what psychedelic medication could do, but that ultimately newer drugs would surpass old first generation drugs for two simple reasons. One, we figured that it was possible through biotechnology and modern medicinal chemistry to make better drugs that made up for some of the shortcomings of, first generation drugs. And then also with new drugs, you'd have, much stronger, much stronger IP protections, which obviously are really, critical in the pharma world. And it really, because of this and because of the range of different, indications that there was at least some preliminary evidence that psychedelic drugs, could be used to treat, and because pharma had to stay away from this class of drugs for decades and really didn't have kind of an asset base in the space, that there was kind of this one-time opportunity to create what could be a really valuable company that could really just focus on developing next generation drugs and partnering with pharma. So we were, really the first group, or one of the first groups in the space to really focus on, early stage discovery in new drugs. It meant that, we filed our patent applications, really, I would say, before most other groups in the space, and really secured for ourselves, a really strong intellectual property position. And as everybody knows, there's lots of great ideas in the world, but in pharma, if you don't have strong IP, then, you really don't have more than effectively a good idea in terms of, commercialization. So we were able to build on that. We've assembled and we're continuing to grow what I think is probably the strongest and broadest portfolio of next generation drugs in the space. And then, I think the really the validation of the model was the partnership that we were able to announce a few months ago with Otsuka Pharmaceuticals, which is really the first of its kind in the space.
Yeah, and that's pretty profound. Now, in terms of validation, right? Like you guys take this focus on IP, and Otsuka came to the table. Could you talk about give us details on the nature of that partnership, how it came about? It's quite a big one, right? And maybe you could give us just how important it is for Mindset itself and the industry. Secondly, is what part of the drug development, what I know you have four different families. We'll talk about that, but maybe just give us an overview of this partnership.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, Otsuka is really a top global pharma company, but particularly in psychiatry. So they would be about a top 10 psychiatry company. They're very innovative. They have one of the leading franchises globally in anti-schizophrenics, and they have antidepressant drugs as well, and a real strong focus on innovation and psychiatry. They actually approached us, and they approached us over a year ago at this point. And they were really doing kind of their diligence on the space, but had, I think, really decided that they wanted to be in the psychedelic space and wanted to be in the next generation space. So really, Mindset underwent as comprehensive a diligence process with them as you could imagine. They looked at every piece of data that we generated, and I think it's a great thing for, that in and of itself is a great thing for investors to be able to kind of take some confidence in, because really they did all the diligence that any, institutional investor could, want or hope to do and more. So the partnership with Otsuka is great. I think it's a great step for the space, because it is the first entrance of, big pharma into new drugs, new psychedelic drugs. But it's obviously huge for Mindset. So the nature of the partnership is that Otsuka is funding the development of Mindset's two sort of short-acting drug families, which are Family 2 and Family 4.
James,
so,
actually, can I hold you on that point? Because I think it probably is worthwhile bringing up the visual of the four different families that you have. So this is your portfolio. Could you just talk to each one and where Otsuka fits, and maybe just take us through the families, and we'll start with Otsuka.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our portfolio today, and I have to say that we're working very hard at expanding this, and we're hoping to have some more news that we can share soon, because really the discovery engine kind of keeps running here at Mindset. But essentially, our families break down along kind of the spectrum of different potential therapeutic use cases for psychedelic drugs. And as some of you might know, the current kind of model where most of the data lies is around really what you call kind of a macrodosing approach. So taking a large dose of a drug and having that experience, buffeted by psychotherapy on the front end and the back end. And what you're really looking for in a macrodosing drug is something that's going to be obviously strong and induce an actual psychedelic trip, but be as safe as possible. And I think one of the key shortcomings with psilocybin that's been identified is its duration, because a duration of 6 to 8 hours is an incredibly long time to have to spend in clinic, ties up a lot of therapist resources. And if you could get to the same therapeutic benefit in, let's say, half the time or shorter, that would obviously be, a much better model for clinicians and obviously much easier for patients. So if I go from kind of left to right, family number one is our most advanced family. That from that comes MSP 1014, which really we liken that to kind of a second generation psilocybin. So although the duration is similar to psilocybin, we see some pretty significant improvements in safety. And it's a stronger drug, easier to manufacture, and I think has a number of incremental advantages. We're seeing a lot of interest from a range of different groups in that family in partnering with us on that family today. Family 2 and Family 4 are part of the Otsuka partnership. So Family 2, we kind of liken that to being a third generation psilocybin. So all the same advantages of Family 1, but there we see durations that are half to less than half, so potentially 2, 3, 4 hour duration, which obviously is a big improvement compared to psilocybin, and is potentially a lot more advantageous for patients and clinicians, and is a stronger drug as well. Family 4 are our DMT and 5-MeO DMT analogs. So that's a class of drugs that is really exciting to folks because it 5-MeO in particular really induces what everyone kind of considers to be probably the most profound psychedelic trip of all. But those drugs are not quite as safe as psilocybin, and so the improvement that we see there from our Family 4 are some pretty improved safety signals. And we think that generally speaking, while psychedelic drugs are pretty safe, we think that safety overall is really kind of an underappreciated concern. If you're talking about patient groups like people suffering from treatment-resistant depression, probably not leading like the healthiest of lives, and probably have more than one ailment beyond just their depression. And so I think that safety is going to be, as these trials go forward, is going to be a really important concern. Family 3. So Family 3 sits really outside of the macrodosing paradigm, and it really kind of sits all the way at the end, other end of the spectrum. We use the term microdosing because that's kind of the easiest to understand. But really what we're talking about here is a class of drugs that still activate some of the same receptors, serotonin receptors. And so we expect that it may be able to provide some of the same kind of neuroprotective benefits as psilocybin, but we don't expect that this class of drugs are going to induce a full hallucinogenic experience. So this family is much earlier in its development, but really promising, we think, for a range of different potential indications and patient groups where you really wouldn't want them to have a full psychedelic experience. So just back to Otsuka really quickly. Otsuka is sponsoring the development of Family 2 and Family 4 to finish off our preclinical development work, and then to take them into phase 1. And through phase 1, and it really positions so all the funding that they're providing is non-dilutive. It doesn't go to our equity, so it's on really favorable terms. They also paid us $5 million in addition to to the funding for the development of the programs. And what all of that funding does is give Otsuka a right of first refusal to negotiate a new deal with Mindset at the end of phase 1 on one or both those families. So for us,
so it's super exciting, James. So
perfect.
So from a perspective of having a partner from a financial backing, that Otsuka is giving you guys that runway where and I think a lot of people forget, this is a very capital intensive industry, right? Like
absolutely
bringing a drug to market is no walk in the park financially, and the rigors of getting it there. Now, James, just in terms of that was a great overview of the key pillars that you guys have. Now, could you talk about just, as we think about key steps going forward for Mindset, obviously the Otsuka partnership on family 2 and family 4. Now, if just as a wrap, just what we should think about going forward.
Yeah, I think Mindset's really teed up for a really exciting rest of 2023 and into next year. So if you think about what the big developments and kind of catalysts are, with family 1, which is our most advanced family, we're going to be moving that into clinical trials either by the end of this year or early next year. I expect that we're going to have, another partnership. We're seeing lots of interest in that compound as psilocybin kind of makes its way, forward to FDA approval. And we're seeing lots of interest from a whole range of different partners. So I'm hopeful that we can get to another commercialization announcement, by the end of the year on that family. But overall with Mindset, this is really about driving assets towards clinical study. So we're on family 2, which is our more advanced family than the most advanced family in the Otsuka partnership. Hoping to select a lead compound from that family. We really almost have a problem of too many different good leads to choose from in that family. And then getting into clinical trials, next year. So within the next 12 months, we're going to have, multiple assets in clinical studies. And I also believe, multiple partnerships. We're also going to start, taking the wraps off of some of the new families that we've been developing and some of the new technologies that, again, we're seeing lots of interest in partnering on. And so, we're going to have a ton of news flow over the next 12 months.
Very exciting. Very exciting, James. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
And we look forward to catching up on all of this over the coming months and hearing more about each of the families. Thank you, James.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, don't go anywhere, everyone. Quick break, and we're coming right back with Cybin. Don't go anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Grizzle Psychedelics Con, the June 22nd, 2022 version.
A lot of twos.
We have Cybin here and Doug Drysdale, CEO. Thank you very much for joining us at Grizzle Psychedelics Con.
Hey, it's great to see you again, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Doug, could you provide a history of Cybin, how you guys got involved in psychedelics, and something you guys have a real bench strength in the management ranks. Talk about that and give everyone a little bit of an overview of the company.
Yeah, I would love to. You're right. Our team is really very impressive. The company was founded at the end of 2019, just as we were coming into the pandemic, and we've grown a lot since then. We've taken the company public in Canada. We cross-listed to the New York Stock Exchange last August. Our team is up to about 55 people today. Across the US, Canada, UK, and Ireland. The R&D team has about 400 years of collective R&D experience. So that's pretty impressive, I think. And they've also built an ecosystem of about 50 vendors and partners that are doing a lot of this, all the important work for us.
Very, very exciting. And so, Cybin, you guys have three major compounds in the R&D pipeline. A CYB 003, which is for major depression disorder and alcohol use, CYB 004, which addresses anxiety, and CYB 005 for neuroinflation. Could you talk about CYB 003 as the lead candidate and what that compound is and what it does?
So CYB3 is an analog of psilocybin, and there's a lot of data on psilocybin. We've known about it for several decades, so it's a great place to start. But psilocybin is a prodrug, and because it's a prodrug and it gets converted to psilocin in the body, that creates a whole load of challenges with psilocybin. It takes a long time to kick in, an hour and a half or so. A treatment session is very long, 4 to 6 hours, and we all metabolize differently. So our livers all work differently. So converting the psilocybin to psilocin varies a lot from one person to another, and you may get unpredictable plasma levels. So we've modified this psilocybin to retain the binding profile, so the same receptor binding profile, but just changing the way that psilocybin analog gets in and out of the body. So CYB3 kicks in about half the time. So the onset is twice as fast, not waiting around as long. The treatment duration is half as long, so it's less time in the clinic, which is great for patients and for physicians. And then we've gotten rid of that variability as well. So we expect to get far more predictable outcomes.
So those are all, those are just taking the aspects of psilocybin that would cause challenges, I guess, from a therapeutic perspective. Is that right? Like this is really to optimize the therapy side of you can think about it just how long does someone need to stay in the clinic? There's a bunch of different issues around that, right?
Yeah, I think for these treatments to become broadly accessible, they have to be reimbursed. They have to be reimbursable. Someone's got to pay for them, a government, a health plan. It's generally not the patient in many cases. And if there's a lot of additional cost because the patient has to be in the clinic setting for a very long time, that makes reimbursement difficult, makes the whole process expensive. So if we can keep that experience short and make sure that outcomes are predictable, then I think it helps more broadly with patient access.
Could you take us through the clinical path for CYB3 and the key milestones ahead, just next steps here?
Yeah, exciting time for us actually, because we discovered CYB3 maybe about 18 months ago. And just last month in May, we filed our IND with the FDA for a phase 1/2A study in MDD, in major depressive disorder. So to go from discovery to the clinic in 18 months is super fast. So that's in the hands of the FDA right now. We expect to get approval to start the study this summer. By the end of the year, we should have pharmacokinetic data, safety data out of that study. And that data we're hoping will confirm what we've seen in those preclinical models. So the faster onset, the shorter action, the low variability. So that first data set towards the end of the year will be really important for CYB3. And then by the middle of next year, we'll have efficacy data coming out of the study as well.
Okay, fantastic. So this is going to be a jam-packed year of data coming out for this CYB3. It's very exciting. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and you're right. You're right. I mean, that and a number of other programs. We have 4 human studies getting up and running this year, so it's a big year for us.
Oh wow. Okay. And CYB4 versus DMT, and I know there was an important, there was a press release this morning around Cybin's DMT study acquisition. Could you just talk through that and just what CYB4 does and just some of the key data that's come out?
Yeah, so with CYB4, we're kind of tackling the opposite problem than we have with psilocybin, and DMT is really short acting. 5 or 10 minutes or so, and a very, very sharp plasma spike. So quite an aggressive experience. Patients can be into a psychedelic state within seconds, and that can create anxiety and sometimes just people being disoriented. And also, we would question the value, the sort of the therapeutic value of such a short session. So what we've done with DMT is used a process called deuteration, where we've substituted some of the hydrogen atoms on the molecule for deuterium. And that helps us slow the breakdown of DMT in the body and extend the duration to, we think, about 20 or 30 minutes or so. Now, there's not a lot of data on dosing of DMT by going IV. Now, because it's broken down so quickly in the body, when you're trying to infuse DMT, it's getting broken down as fast as you can infuse it. So you have to give a bolus and then an infusion. And we're still trying to figure out how much bolus to give, over what time frame do we infuse, or what rate do we infuse. And that's the purpose of the study that we just acquired from Entheon Biomedical. And that enables us to get all that information around DMT, so that as we bring CYB4 to market, we can do a bridging study and use that data. So really exciting acquisition. I think it's very smart what the R&D team did there. Instead of waiting until we were able to set something up ourselves, acquiring the study has accelerated this program by maybe 9 to 12 months, which is a huge amount of time in drug development.
Is that very common? To me, that sounds like a very smart way to just, because timelines are everything in this industry, right? The more you can squeeze timelines out, that makes a ton of sense to acquire something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, timelines are everything. I mean, everything's driven infinitely by the patent life, right? And we have a composition of matter patent on CYB4. So if you can take a year off of drug development on a drug that might sell $1 billion a year, you've saved $1 billion in revenues. So this small deal actually is worth an awful lot on the back end.
Yeah.
It's not that common because it's not that often you can interchange molecules like this, but in all of our preclinical work, our animal work, we're comparing CYB4 directly to DMT. That's our kind of analog. And so to have human data on DMT in parallel to the CYB4 development just saves us a ton of time. That means when we come to launch CYB4 studies in humans, instead of those studies being exploratory, they're more confirmatory and lower risk.
Great. Now, CYB5 targeting neuroinflammation. Could you take us through the compound and what's the size for this market and help us understand what neuroinflammation is?
Yeah, so this is a pretty early stage program. It's still in discovery.
Okay.
And but it's we have a phenethylamine program. So phenethylamines are molecules like MDMA and mescaline. It's a really broad category of molecules of very different properties. And we've been looking for phenethylamines that have properties that are more like tryptamines, more like psilocybin. And CYB5 appears to be like that. At sub-psychedelic doses, low doses, it appears to have anti-inflammatory properties. Yes. So this could target neuroinflammation. It's already bioavailable. It's really efficient at getting into the brain. And so we could be targeting with this molecule conditions like Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease or MS. And these are huge, huge markets. Yeah. So this is not psychiatry. So we're not talking about depression or anxiety here. We're talking about much, much more degenerative diseases. And so we're looking for partners on this. We've started a partnering process. We're talking to a number of pharma companies. This is an area of huge interest right now, trying to tackle some of these diseases. And we're hoping we can find a partner to help take that one forward.
Fantastic. And just to wrap up, obviously, drug development takes a lot of time, energy, and most importantly, money. Could you talk about the capitalization of Cybin and what you guys are built for, and just key points, milestones for the near future? We talked about some of the key points earlier, but if you could just reiterate those, that'd be great. Thank you.
So yeah, we're lucky to have been well capitalized, through the development of the company. We've raised $120 million to date. As of the last quarter, we reported end of December, we had $64 million on the balance sheet. We're burning about $10 million a quarter, roughly. It's fairly consistent, fairly predictable. So we've got a good solid runway well into 2023, and that'll help us get through some of these near-term milestones, like approval of our IND and early PK data for CYB3. We'll have data from the CYB4, the DMT study this year. We're collecting data with each cohort. We're also running a study at University of Washington in Seattle using our psychotherapy program called Embark. We'll have data for that by the year end. And our partner Kernel, which has a neuroimaging device, a helmet that we've been using to look at brain changes during psychedelic therapy, will also have a study that reads out by year end. So 4 human studies with data by the end of the year. So that's an awful lot of catalysts, and I think will help really move along our pipeline this year.
Doug, thank you so much for a fantastic overview of Cybin, and look forward to catching up with you later in the year. Lots of catalysts to talk about. Thank you very much, Doug. That's Cybin. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to see you.
Thanks.
All right, everybody, don't go anywhere. Remember, enter if you comment during the stream, we're going to do giveaways. We're going to pick random people who are commenting. So make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all those people. We're going to be throwing you some of the swag that the companies have been sending us. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're right back with the CEO of HAVN. Don't go anywhere.
All right, Grizzle Psychedelics Con, we're back with HAVN Life and Tim Moore, CEO. Thank you for joining us. Always great to have you on.
It's always great to be on. It's good to see you guys again. How are you today?
Very good. Thanks, Tim.
Great. All right, Tim. So to kick things off, I think it'd be helpful for investors to hear a quick summary of your two businesses. You know, a dual pillar business model is a bit unique in this space. So you have your functional mushrooms, you call HAVN Retail. You have your psychedelic compounds, you call HAVN Labs. Can you talk a bit about those?
Sure. Let me go through labs first. We have built a supply chain of naturally derived psilocybin to support the industry. We're selling our product to retreats where it's legal. We're also selling to psychedelic assisted therapy clinics and to new drug development companies. So it's kind of like we're selling picks and shovels to the gold miners.
I like it.
We've validated our supply chain. We're successfully exporting from Jamaica to both the US and Canada. It's a highly regulated transaction, and we've assembled the intellectual capital to be able to do that. And frankly, we see the regulations as a barrier to entry because we've been able to do it and others haven't. We export from Jamaica as a GMP agricultural product. and it lands in the US as a controlled substance under a DEA license. So we're really happy about that. We're working on a project to export to the UK. And if we're successful with that, we'll be the first company in probably 30 years to legally import psilocybin into the UK. So we're really happy with where our labs business and our supply chain of naturally derived psilocybin is, and just look forward to that continuing to grow. On the retail side, we've got 7 mushroom-based products that we've launched that are in distribution at specialty retails, food, drug, and mass merchants, as well as .com that are on Amazon.ca and Amazon.com. And we made an acquisition late last year of a product that's a patented traumatic brain injury formula. We've rebranded that as HAVN Life, and we've launched that. So it's also available, and it provides significant benefit to people who have suffered traumatic brain injury. It's being used by 19 professional sports teams as part of their brain injury program. So the future is bright for that product. We've signed some white label supply agreements. In April, we shipped a container of product to Australia for our partner there for distribution in New Zealand and Australia. So that business continues to cook along as well. So it's, yeah, we're busy guys.
Yeah. So we're going to dig more into those 2 different businesses. But for now, I know you guys dropped some big news yesterday that's related to kind of the supply chain of psilocybin. So it's your deal with Green Stripe. I was wondering if you could tell everyone who maybe didn't see that, what does this partnership do for you today? And what do you expect it to do for you in the future?
So Green Stripe is a Canadian company, and through their Jamaican subsidiary, Green Peak Growers, they cultivate cannabis in Jamaica. And it's like, well, cannabis and psychedelics, what's that got to do with anything? Well, the reality is that the 14 dispensaries that Green Stripe sells to in Jamaica have all been asking for psilocybin. I mean, they can get street mushrooms, but what we can provide them with is a GMP product with a certificate of analysis to show the active ingredient quantity and the absence of any contaminants. So this is a supply agreement with Green Stripe for them to be a distributor to the dispensaries in Jamaica. And like I said, there's 14 dispensaries now. It's projected to be 35 by the end of this year. And the CEO there, Wayne Isaacs, is already working on relationships with dispensaries in other Caribbean countries where cannabis is legal. So he'll be following that. There's an economic union called CARICOM, which is kind of like the EU, but it's the Caribbean country. So it's relatively easy to export from Jamaica to other Caribbean countries. So we'll follow Wayne and Green Stripe to the other islands as an opportunity to sell more of our psilocybin to the dispensaries.
And it's the idea there, are we seeing, like you're much closer to this than most, right? In terms of how this is evolving as folks are going to the Caribbean for medicinal treatments. Like this is an area that, I know people that have got, people talk about ayahuasca trips, people talk about, so what's the culture that's getting built in the Caribbean specifically as it relates to almost mental health? Like it's a fascinating dynamic, and you guys are almost like an artery supplier to this, right? It's fascinating. It's almost like what should be built here quickly, you can just plug and play there, and people are saying, I'm just going to travel there.
Yeah, there's already approximately a dozen retreats in operation in Jamaica. We signed a supply agreement and announced a couple of weeks ago with one called HAVN, which is a Canadian company that operates retreats in Jamaica. And they offer a 3 or 4 day retreat. It's priced from $2,000 to $5,000, depending on the accommodations. You get your flight to Montego Bay. They pick you up. They take you there. It's a full 3 days with a shaman, with a specialized diet, with a psychedelic experience, with a qualified trip sitter, with a clinician there with you, so that you have the proper support for your psychedelic experience. And we're seeing that that's gaining great popularity. These retreats are busy. There's also retreats in Antigua and in Costa Rica that are doing exactly the same thing. And it's people that can't get treatment in North America that can afford to make the trip that are going and doing that. So, here, in North America, we have people who are self-medicating without the appropriate support. And frankly, they're way better off to go to a place where there's a trained professional that's going to accompany them. And so they have the proper experience.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you guys have an ambitious goal to be a preferred supplier of psilocybin to the medical community in North America. It just seems like what we talked about is you're finding different avenues, signing little by little agreements to get the distribution out there. So could you talk about your partnership with TherapSil? That's to supply psilocybin to doctors. That's very interesting. Is this the first step to ramping up distribution of psilocybin in North America once you have the needed licenses?
Yeah, so TherapSil is a not-for-profit organization that does a couple of things. First of all, they advocate on behalf of patients to, get access to psilocybin and other psychedelics. They're actually behind a lawsuit for patients that are suing the government to get access. But importantly, what they do is they provide training for doctors and for clinicians on how to do a psychedelic-assisted therapy session. Because despite the fact that we now have the special access program in place that gives doctors permission to lobby the government for the use of psilocybin, we need doctors to be trained. And so TherapSil has a very comprehensive training program, and they're turning out doctors and clinicians that can do this, which will create the demand for psilocybin. They're working with us to assist us in getting Health Canada's approval of our psilocybin as one of the active ingredients that can be prescribed by doctors under the Special Access Program. So we see it opening up significant opportunity for us, for all of the patients that are seeking help right now. I mean, formerly it was the Section 56 exemption, but there were very few of those issued. And they were limited primarily to end of life for cancer patients that were suffering from end of life anxiety. And it really wasn't servicing enough people. So the Special Access Program has the opportunity, by empowering every doctor in the country to lobby for their patients, that will get a lot more people getting treated. And I'm excited. And as I said before, I think that the help that we can provide to these people is tremendous.
Now, is the special access program kind of like a precursor to getting to that point where you have a dealer's license and you can kind of more freely import psilocybin, or is it a totally separate pathway?
It's a totally separate pathway. It's really about giving physicians the opportunity to do this. It doesn't change the status of someone who's actually supplying psilocybin. That still has to happen through a dealer's license. That architecture for dealer's license hasn't changed at all.
Okay, gotcha. Now, just wanted to move to HAVN retail quickly. Could you provide an update on your distribution deal for those products across Canada? Has that totally ramped up yet? And do you have a specific strategy for expanding that into the US market?
Yes, so we've added some additional retailers in Canada. We've got Calgary Co-op. We've got some retailers in Ontario. We've got an announcement we hope to make in the next few weeks with a significant Ontario retailer. We're getting some traction there, and we're excited for that. Our business on e-commerce through well.ca, amazon.ca, as well as our own site, Your Haven Life, continues to grow. In the US, consumers can get our product either from our website or from amazon.com. We've made the decision to not pursue retail here yet, simply because it's so expensive. I mean, if you get a purchase order from a significant retailer like CVS, then you've got a really major cash requirement for advertising, promotion, merchandising, and everything else to pull that inventory through the store so that you maintain that distribution. And for a micro-cap company at our point, for us to commit millions of dollars against that, really, it doesn't make sense. I'd rather grow the business a little more slowly through e-commerce. And then when we get to a point where it's affordable for us to pursue retail, do that.
Yeah, it sounds like you have more than enough room in Canada right now to sign additional deals and ramp up distribution. So, America can come later.
That's right. And frankly, the e-commerce business in the US is way more mature. Amazon.com is a significantly higher penetration channel than Amazon.ca. And so we can get a pretty meaningful business in the US through e-commerce alone.
Fantastic. Tim, just high level, as a wrap, key points for investors to think going forward for HAVN. You guys have a differentiated strategy in the industry as a supplier to all the all the dynamic studies happening.
Yeah, we're hearing about a lot of research, but you're the only one we talked to that's supplying all of that research, or attempting to.
And then secondarily, the nutraceutical business, which from our perspective, we've been very favorable. We think that functional mushroom side of the business is something we're still scratching the surface. Maybe just how investors should look at the next 12, 24 months for HAVN.
Yeah, so let me start with the nutritional supplement side. So let's remember that 3/4 of the population takes nutritional supplements on a regular basis. And so for them to add a mushroom-based product is relatively easy. And functional mushrooms are now the fastest growing segment of the nutritional supplement business. So products like our lion's mane or reishi or cordyceps are in that fast growth segment. And there's lots of room for growth. Our traumatic brain injury product really does set us apart. It has patent protection. It has proven support for brain injury. The most noticeable benefit for most people that take it is they get a good night's sleep. And for people that have suffered traumatic brain injury, they really struggle to get a good night's sleep. And so when they take our Brain Evolve product, the PM formula, they'll find that they get a good night's sleep. So I see that business continuing to grow. We did about $250,000 of sales in our fiscal year that ended April 30th. We'll see that continue to grow this year, but we did most of those sales in the month of April. So it is ramping up. On the lab side, we've got lots of opportunity there as well. We've signed more supply agreements. We got a purchase order from Revive Therapeutics. They're having their clinical trials administered by the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And right now our science team is working with their science team on the specifications of what exactly we're going to ship to them. And then we'll be able to provide them with the product for them to prepare the first doses for their clinical trials that are starting later this year. So the labs business, as a supplier to everyone, it puts us in revenue now. It de-risks our business as we're able to, diversify our risk across multiple companies. The challenge with a company that's focused on a single molecule and a single indication is it's a binary path. If they have a failure at any point along the way, then they don't make it to market. So by diversifying our risk across multiple new drug development companies, we're able to maintain that revenue path going forward. And we're looking forward to, getting to cash flow positive, which, we hope to have happen in the next 30 months. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the market, but we've put all of our efforts focused on continuing to build our revenue and to manage our cash flow.
Great.
Tim, thank you so much. Look forward to hearing the evolution and the next Grizzle Psychedelics Con. Thanks again, and a very dynamic business format with functional mushrooms and even labs. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day. See you again soon.
Thanks.
All right, everyone, don't go anywhere. Remember, subscribe for our best research, and anyone who's commenting during the conference, we're going to be giving out a bunch of cool swag that the companies have sent. We'll pick you guys randomly. So we're going to take a very quick break, and we'll be right back with our good friend Fabio from PharmaTher. right, welcome back everyone to Grizzle Psychedelics Con. Now we're joined by the CEO of PharmaTher, Fabio Chianelli. He's a good friend of Psychedelics Con. Welcome back, Fabio.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Scott, Thomas, as usual. We're going to be very good today.
Best behavior.
And he's a collector of what I'd call fine apparel. We can see that in the back.
Yes, sir.
He's collected the generationals. You still got to get the red, and we got a blue right now, and we I think we've got some others in the hopper. I think we got one back here.
Yeah, but Fabio is the collector's item, the diamond hands.
That's
a different time in the stock market.
My son loves this hat.
Nice.
We only did one batch of that. We may bring it back. Once
the market returns to diamond hands, we'll bring it back.
Create an NFT with it. Go for it.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. Fabio, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I maybe just wanted to kick it off with you guys put out a positive study results on the efficacy of Ketabet recently. And I'm wondering, were these results required for the FDA to approve a phase 2 study? And how long would phase 2 run, do you expect?
Yeah, so and thank you for that. We announced that the results yesterday. And going to your question, was it used for FDA approval? Was it necessary? Not necessarily. So we had done some preclinical work that showed betaine significantly reduced ketamine side effect, right? But before advancing the Ketabet or the combination of ketamine betaine to a phase 2 study, we want to reduce our risk and evaluate ketamine in a more of a pilot observational study in the US. And the results from the study was what we expected, right? And betaine generally reduced the side effects of ketamine by nearly 70% and supports our plans to advance that phase 2 study. But we want to use that in our microneedle patch, which we already developed. So we're intending to file our IND with the FDA for the phase 2 study by the end of this year, and then with the expectation to complete the study within the end of Q2 of next year.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now onto the CatRx 4. Now, is that the product closest to generating revenue in your view? How do you see your product slate?
You know what, Scott, now that you said CatRx 4, it's really CatRx IV, but I never thought that maybe someone would.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow. You know, I totally went off script there.
Yeah, no, but that's probably people even think it's a CatRx 4.
It sounds like a leading edge of technology when you say it the way.
Are you on CatRx 6? Yes or no?
7 is coming.
Yeah, we're to the ketamine S plaid. That's what we're going to do, right?
Elon Musk should be launching this product.
That's right. That's right. Mind you, he made a comment.
Thank you for telling me. I'm going to make a note here.
No worries. I'm going to change that too, because maybe that's what people are phonetically saying it, right? So nevertheless, yes, it's an exciting opportunity and development for us, right? So what we're doing here is that we'll be filing an abbreviated new drug application to the FDA by the end of this year, and we expect FDA approval in Q2 of 2023 or next year. And what this is, it's basically the ketamine. It's an intravenous and injectable product that can be used at the clinics, right? And what we see right now is that ketamine for a while has been on the FDA drug shortage list. So the demand is huge. Obviously, we know supply is very limited at this point. In fact, we're going to fill that gap, right? And the reason is that demand for ketamine is growing fast for its original indication for as an anesthetic for surgeries and general procedures. But also, you can see the influx of this wave of millions of patients now seeking ketamine for their treatment in depression and pain, as well as these other sub-indications in mental health and pain disorders. So we expect to actually generate meaningful revenue in 2023 for our ketamine intravenous product.
Great. Now,
in the second half, though.
Yeah, second half. Okay. Now, will we have this chart up? Maybe we can bring that just back up. I wanted to ask which of your indications you're targeting. Do you think has the largest market size, and which would be the most profitable? You know, in a perfect world.
Right. I mean, really, the product that is going to be the largest, if you will, is in depression. Right. So we have.
Okay.
Right. So with depression, we have there's depression and chronic pain. Now, as you can see that with the patients now looking for ketamine as a treatment for their depression and pain. Now, there's sub-indications for PTSD, anxiety, and whatnot. But generally, if you talk to a psychiatrist or even the ketamine clinics, right, a lot of the patients are going for their depression and pain. So that's where we see the major growth drivers or business profit drivers for our business.
Okay, that's really interesting. Now, you've announced a bunch of partnerships, and I'm looking at like the CC Bio partnership, the LTS. It makes me think that, one of your strategies is advancing the research, but also it's exploring novel delivery methods for ketamine and other drugs. Is that a fair way to think about PharmaTher?
Right. So with the, I'm sorry, for the question is.
I'm just wondering, it sounds like you have kind of two prongs. So you want to move research along through the typical channels, but you also look for novel delivery methods. You want to create those novel delivery methods.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. So what we're doing is we have two drug delivery solutions, right? So first and foremost, I want to say is that we're a ketamine, specialty ketamine company, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is where we see the near-term revenue opportunities exist and where ketamine has the most impact for mental health and pain disorders. However, with our amazing delivery solutions, with our wearable pump and as well as our next generation microneedle patch, not only like they can deliver ketamine, but other psychedelics such as psilocybin, DMT, and MDMA, we can also look to even deliver other avenues or other drugs such as vaccines that can efficiently for infectious diseases per se, even biological warfare, which we're kicking around internally, as well as even pox viruses. But at the end of the day, we see our application for our delivery system in more in that the ketamine or psychedelic space, because as you can see, even psilocybin, DMT, they're actually even the better delivered via intravenous, right? And our
so this is that idea, like, and just so I'm clarifying, right? Obviously, what you guys are developing is really to address that idea that I'm getting this spike, like, and just kind of flatlining, like maybe you can help me understand that a bit better, because that really is the opportunity where, and that applies to all drugs, right? Just providing that constant amount of said drug,
right?
And,
so what we call is a pharmacokinetic profile, right? So you have different intravenous, you have this large bolus dump spike, and then it kind of tapers away, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes for the said drug, for the indication, that is okay. Then you can have the sort of like the more of a sustained release where you can have a mild spike and then you kind of have it or taper down. So what you want is have like it as an internal kind of maintenance dose as it goes further on. Now the thing with that is you can't deliver a huge amount of drug into a person right away, because especially with ketamine, what you'll have is all the side effects that come with it, or even psilocybin. Each person is different, right? So you want to have it tapered and whatnot. So, but different delivery solutions will fit these different pharmacokinetic profiles, right? That's why, we have our microneedle patch, which I think is a game changer in the field, because we believe that we can take the drug or the controlled substance, such as ketamine, and have patients to treat at home use, right? Mm-hmm. And then also without avoiding and using it for recreational use. And that's the crust of our microneedle patch. But that could be for the maintenance dose, right? We can never forget that the relationship between the patient and the physician at the ketamine clinic, that's first and foremost, right? That has to happen. So whether it be that through an IV or a wearable pump, right? Because it now eliminates the IV so that infections and miscalculation of the dosing and whatnot. You have a wearable pump that an individual can go, relax, put it on their belly, and then have their treatment. And then as they want, they can be left with a microneedle patch that they can take as that maintenance dose going down the road. So they can have even an effective treatment opportunity. So that's why these different profiles you want to go. And you'll see companies even like, Compass has their oral pill, but then you have other companies working on an oral, an IV psilocybin, a DMT, inhalable, or even an IV, right? Because they want a specific pharmacokinetic profile for that set indication for that patient.
Man, it sounds like you guys are doing some exciting things in devices. I definitely noticed that when I was updating myself on what you've been working on since our last Psychedelics Con. So it'll be good to track that. Maybe on that note, just wrapping up to help everyone, you have a lot of moving parts, a lot of news that's going to come out. What are kind of the few most important things you think investors should be looking for over the next 12, 18 months?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and from a clinical standpoint, we expect to have our phase 2 studies with our microneedle patch and ketamine and our wearable pump completed in early 2023. We also plan to initiate our phase 3 clinical study for Parkinson's disease by the end of this year. But more importantly, and which kind of differentiates and what's interesting for shareholders, and even from what we've built over the last several years with PharmaTher, is that we expect to be a commercial stage company in 2023 with up to 3 FDA approvals under our belt. The first is our ANDA, or abbreviated new drug application for Catarax intravenous, which would fill the shortage gap for ketamine to serve the growing demands in surgery, mental health, and pain, even neurological as an off-label. But secondly, the FDA approval of a 510K application for a wearable pump, which can deliver ketamine and also other psychedelics. So it's really kind of a replacement of the IV, if you will, like having, basically cords attached to you and whatnot. You have some freedom to operate with a wearable pump. But lastly, we're also looking to submit our FDA approval for a 505(b)(2) application for Catarax intravenous to treat complex regional pain. So to say the least, we are very excited about the next 12 months as we transition from a clinical stage company to a commercial stage one. And I think, as investors, yourselves, and everyone who's watching our company, it's kind of, we try to do a good job of putting that information in press releases in our deck and our website. But essentially, it really comes down to is that we're building a specialty ketamine company, because what do we know about ketamine? It's not the perfect drug, but it does work, right? And how do we deliver it better? How do we have it treated so that we can have these clinicians and clinics deliver ketamine and have that partnership with their patients to treat the endless amount of indications that ketamine can treat. So we're here. We're a solution provider at the end of the day.
Yeah, I like that. You have a pragmatic approach. I think it's been fun to see where PharmaTher is now versus when we had our first Psychedelics Con, which wasn't that long ago. So congratulations for all your success.
Thank you.
And thank you as always, Fabio, for stopping by. As Fabio Chianelli, he's head of PharmaTher.
Thank you, Scott, Thomas, everyone else who's watching. Thank you very much. And looking forward to the next Psychedelics Con.
Thank you very much, Fabio.
Awesome. Take care.
All
Thank you for the support.
All right, everybody, don't go anywhere. We'll take a quick break and we're right back with the CEO, Ronan Levy.
All right, welcome back to Grizzle Psychedelics Con, a favorite. We have FieldTrip Health and Ronan Levy. Ronan, thank you for joining us again at Grizzle Psychedelics Con.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Always happy to join you guys. It's the most fun event of the year.
It is, right?
Amazing.
It is.
That's what we're going for, if nothing else. So FieldTrip has been very busy since our last cannabis or psychedelics con, sorry. So let's talk through some of your changes. So can you talk investors through the strategic reason for splitting off the company? You have FieldTrip Health and Wellness now, and you have a research side of the business, which is called Reunion Neuroscience. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, in changing times, if you're not changing with the times, then you're kind of not paying attention to what's going on. And so this is something with FieldTrip and the separation happening, something that we probably knew we would have to cross this bridge eventually, because having clinics under the same roof as a drug development company was probably not going to be something that was long-term sustainable from an FDA perspective. And as we were getting close to starting our phase 1 clinical trials for Reunion, which start actually in a couple of weeks, we'll be doing our first phase 1 dosings in Australia in a couple of weeks. We decided it was time to do that analysis, to ask that question for the first time. Does it make sense to keep both of these entities under a single roof? And the answer came back is there's tons of synergies there, but both businesses are at a position where they can be self-sustaining, benefit from dedicated management, have their own capital structures with targeted investors, and all the synergies that we think we could maintain by having them under one roof, we can actually maintain through a contractual relationship. It really comes down to know-how, data, and insights, and that's easy enough to share through a contractual relationship. So we saw lots of upside in separating them, and virtually and truthfully no downside in separating the businesses.
Now, you mentioned collaboration agreement. I'm just curious to ask you, so what does that allow the two entities to do? Is it pretty much they can kind of collaborate how they were before, even if they're separate companies, or how's that structured?
In a nutshell, exactly. So, I mean, Reunion is going to have access to our physicians, our therapists, in terms of developing the best protocols for the trials that will eventually happen with FT104 and hopefully like our FT200 series and all that kind of stuff. Any data insights into how much therapy is required and how we optimize the delivery of care for FT104 can be generated. Truthfully, we still sit in the same office, so there's going to be a lot of that collaboration. We've launched site management services within FieldTrip Health and Wellness, which is essentially conducting clinical trials. So Reunion will have first access to using our clinical trials resources within the clinic's business as well. So basically, it's exactly what we had before and exactly how it's going to be set up, just with the benefit of some separation, which gives some independence and objectivity associated with it.
Okay. Now, helping investors, make sense of what do the two companies look like financially once they're split apart. I just wanted to get some clarity on you're raising a bunch of cash to fund a piece of the business. How is the cash being allocated? Is it all going to FieldTrip Health and Wellness, or is there some of that going to Reunion, or is Reunion well capitalized?
Reunion's well capitalized. I don't remember what our last quarterly cash balance was exactly, but Reunion should have, give or take, $45 million in the bank once the spin out is completed.
Yeah, I think that was the number I saw, yeah.
Yeah, so the $20 million that we're raising presently will all go into FieldTrip Health and Wellness, and that's going to be used to continue to fund operations, quite frankly. We're going to be evolving the strategy for FieldTrip Health and Wellness a bit. One of the things that's becoming increasingly clear is that everyone talks about this as a revolution in mental health medicine and psychiatry. It's much, much bigger than that, let's be honest. And what we've done with FieldTrip is we've created a brand that has incredible reach. We own over half the share of voice in the US, which means over half of every media mention in the US includes at least a feature or mention of FieldTrip. So we've got the awareness out there. We've got incredible results. As far as I'm aware, the treatment options, the ketamine-assisted therapy in North America and the psilocybin-assisted therapy we're offering in the Netherlands is creating the best depression and anxiety treatment there is, bar none. We see people going from severe anxiety and depression scores to mild anxiety and depression scores, and those benefits lasting for months, 3 or 4 months at a time before we start to see creep up. You can't get that anywhere as far as I know. So we're delivering amazing outcomes, but what we realized is there's a big gap between our brand reach and our 12 existing locations. How do we start to fill that gap a little bit? And so that's why we've launched the at-home partnership with New Life. So We can reach people who aren't necessarily in the geographic locations of our clinics and offer them great treatment and great outcomes and great experiences. And we're going to take our Trip app, which has always been kind of sitting on the side there, growing moments over moments, week over week, and make it a much more central focus. So anybody who finds out about FieldTrip has a home within FieldTrip, whether it's just information, whether it's meditations, whether it's music, or whether they want to go at home or in clinic, we can support them. And so really leverage all of our assets in a much better way is really going to be the strategy post spin out.
So the app is going to be an important part of the at-home business as you scale that?
It will be a part of it. It'll be a funnel for it. It'll be a funnel for the rest of the business. But what we realized is just even before hopping on this call, having conversations with people who have positive experiences with psychedelic therapies and psychedelics. And there's no consistent database. There's no consistent home for people to find consistent information, stay on top of what the best music or the meditations to support that is. That's much bigger than the medical market right now, to be quite honest. That's happening literally everywhere. Farmers in rural Ontario are coming out of the woodworks to talk to us about psychedelics. It's like all of these people need something to hold on to, and they hold on to the FieldTrip brand. They're all so familiar with the FieldTrip brand. Now we can actually give them much more to work with in whatever their journey, whether it's coming to put their bums in a seat at our clinic, or they're doing their own thing in Oregon or Jamaica or wherever they be doing their thing. There's a home within FieldTrip for them.
So it's really becoming almost like you guys are creating that community ask, right? Living virtually, and obviously people that have come through the clinics.
That's exactly right. I started to think about FieldTrip as becoming a platform for every, really, I think the mission going forward, even though this isn't fully articulated yet, is we want to provide everything you need for the journey, right? If you need a therapist and a doctor and a clinic, wonderful. If you just need meditations, cool. We've got that for you. I think the response so far has continued to be fantastic, and more people around the world become aware of FieldTrip every day.
Now, we talked about FieldTrip at home a little bit, but I'm very curious about this. So from an investor perspective, I would assume those could be more profitable because there's just less overhead than, in clinic. It's lower upfront. And then also, do you think at home, could it be bigger than the clinics one day, or is it a way to speed up acceptance and use, and then the clinics kind of are the mature end state?
Well, I think it certainly could be bigger than the clinics at some point. Our strategy with the model and building the clinics to this point was to validate this could be done efficiently and successfully and safely. And we've done that. Now it's about scale. Now it's about access. And while we will continue to expand the clinic network, we're kind of holding at 12 right now as those continue to get up the curve and become cash flow positive. With the New Life partnership of the FieldTrip at home, it has virtually zero capital outlay, and is really helping us take advantage of the awareness that we're creating with people we can't serve because they're not in their geographic location. And so the partnership with New Life is great. They're mission aligned. We see the world similarly. We're sharing insights and awareness to enhance the value and the quality of our treatments and moving forward together. And I do think it will just by definition scale faster because it's delivered all virtually and there's no geographic limitations. But I do think, a subset of the people who have a great at-home experience are going to say hey, I want to go to the next level. I want to do this on a deeper, more integrated, more high touch point basis. And there's people that are going to come to our clinics, and also potentially vice versa. As a lot of people who go through our treatments in the clinics want to continue on, but want to have a little bit more flexibility to do so. Great. Now we have the at-home offering. And so it really just expands reach and opens up new audiences for us.
Yeah, it sounds like a game changer for conversion because now you're location agnostic. If someone hears about FieldTrip, they can experience FieldTrip. It doesn't matter if there's a location near them or not.
That's exactly right.
That's interesting. So just to wrap things up, could you help investors with kind of what's on the horizon for you guys? What should people watch for? What should they expect over the next, say, year from FieldTrip? Now that you're two separate companies.
Now it's two separate companies. So on the Reunion side, like I mentioned, we're starting phase 1 clinical trials in the next couple of weeks and hope to have readouts before the end of the year. And we're expecting very positive results there. And on the FieldTrip Health and Wellness, our focus is completing the spin out. It should be completed in around the end of June, early July. We're raising $20 million on that. All shares upon completion of the spin out will be free trading. So we think it's a really attractive investment opportunity. And then the focus for FieldTrip Health and Wellness is, like I said, bringing that alignment, bringing the trip into a trip app into a much more central focus, scaling the at-home ketamine and continuing to drive great results in our 12 locations across North America and the Netherlands. That was a hard thing to spit out.
Yeah, two big words in a row.
Now, Ronan, always impressive what you're building. You guys are the interface with the people, right? There's so much happening behind the scenes, obviously in R&D, et cetera, but where FieldTrip sits is unique, and no one has quite built a brand like FieldTrip, as you stated. So, Ronan, thank you so much. As always, we'll see you next Psychedelics Con. Appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody, we're rolling through. Remember, leave a comment, like, subscribe. All the comments, we're going to go through it, and we're going to be throwing swag out at the end of the conference.
And thumbs up and all that. If you're on YouTube, thumbs up lets other people know. And we got the last speaker coming through.
Yeah, we're going to do a quick, man, it's flown by.
All right, welcome back, Grizzle Psychedelics Con. Last speaker of the day, but most important, Christian Angermayer, chairman of Atai. We had him kick off the last Psychedelics Con. We're wrapping it up this time because there's tons to talk about, and you always bring so much excitement to the genre, and it's always a great discussion. Thank you for joining us again.
So thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Now, I'll kick it off really high level. There's so much to discuss here, but could you just talk about this, the current global mental health crisis? How severe is it? Just give us a backdrop on how important. What's the dynamic we're seeing right now?
Okay, but in short, because I guess that some other speakers have already mentioned it, meaning the famous number, which is always circling around, is that approximately 1 billion people have mental health issues. Having said that, my belief is that for 3 reasons, actually, that number is way too low, and it's actually way higher. Nobody knows, but I would say significantly higher for 3 reasons. The one is, unfortunately, it's still a very stigmatized disease. So not everybody who needs and deserves support is coming forward, and those people are not counted. The good news is that mental health is getting gradually destigmatized. We're talking more about it. Yeah, there are athletes, there are celebrities who are coming out and talking about it. But we will see, and we're already seeing that a bit, is that with less stigma, more people will have it, not because they suddenly have it, but they always had it, but now dare to come forward. So that's one point. The second point is that COVID has made any mental health issue significantly worse. And those numbers, that 1 billion people, is a 2019 number, because always the WHO needs 2 years roundabout to compile global data. So for somewhere in this year, for the first time, we're gonna have a COVID number, but that's going to be from early COVID, and then it's going to get worse and worse. So anyway, so the COVID boost is not in these numbers. And then the third, which is sort of one of my really passion topics, is that I believe overall the world we're building, like disruption, like tech, like, which by the way, I'm part of it, building that, is in the long term, it's very good for humanity. But I think in the short term, it's very toxic for our mental health. So these three things together, still stigmatized, COVID boost, not in the numbers yet, and then in generally the world is really toxic for our brain, will make that number over the next years go up, unfortunately, dramatically. So, and then the last point, by the way, sorry, it was for my long answer, is then where do we start actually calling something a mental health issue? Like, so there is a questionnaire which tells you, okay, if you have that and that score, yes, you are depressive. But maybe there are people, and I think there are many of them, who don't feel fully depressive, for example, but they are not happy either. So I actually always try to turn it around and say, the goal, what I would love to, is that people are really fully happy. And if you ask me that, I would say less than 10% of the world population would call themselves fully happy at the moment. So 80, 90% need improvement. And that is sort of then, and so practically what I'm saying is ultimately we all deserve, need, should have the access to mental health boosts.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and you know, all of those points are really critical. I think the COVID point is probably the one that, like, how much do we even have estimates on how much worse it's gone? I know everyone has anecdotal, and it's been bad. Like, there's no question.
There are sub numbers from countries which indicate that sort of the percentage in Germany, for example, of people with mental health issues went up around 30%. So that would add on a global scale another 300 billion people. And again, I don't think that's the full number, because even in that COVID, like, people were like, you know what, like, there was this sort of sentiment, be happy that you didn't die. Like, so it's a little bit like, no, but like, we suppressing, like, who, think about it, maybe even you had bad days. Do you really openly talk about it? Like, no, like, people, we're still very conditioned. I had an amazing discussion with a globally famous athlete. We're gonna do something together in the middle of the year, so I can't say the name, but like, you all would know the name. Yeah. And he told me how hard it is to, especially in a sector where you are expected to perform. And by the way, that's not just an athlete, that's everybody of us. We live in a world where we expected to perform, like a CEO, whatever, how hard it is to say, look, I'm not doing well, like, and I need help. Yeah, because it's immediately connected to weakness and to, oh, can he do his job? Can he perform? Yeah. So COVID alone, I would say 30-40% up. But again, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
That's staggering stats, and just that aspect of this culture, you know. And so I think one thing maybe we can touch on there. I don't think the metaverse is good for mental health. You know, I don't think going more down the rabbit hole of not having human interactions. But I would love to get your thoughts on that. But further to this almost culture of where anything less than winning is viewed as an abject. You know, and people bottle that up, right? Failure is not viewed as something you can work through. It's just something you should keep to the side.
But I tell you, so I have a very cheesy view on mental health, but I think it's, by the way, the right one. It's just, by the way, so many people shy away from winning. And it's not, by the way, now disclaimer, that it's not an Atai topic. That's my personal view, because it's not quantifiable. Yeah, sort of. Because why do we get mental health issues, and why more and more? Like, sort of, so there must be something. That is what I said as my last point. I believe the world we're living in is toxic. Yeah, and by the way, there is great research, but early on, because we really don't know why. Meaning the same. If you look at the human condition, like, if you live long enough, somebody you love, namely your parents, will die, because the course of nature is that in a normal course, they die before you. Yeah, everybody of us will have a bad time in their jobs, like somewhere. Like, so human nature, you can't be human and live a human life fully and without having enormous pain and trauma once somewhere. So, and the question is, why do some people cope with it? Yeah. And why do other people break and get a mental health issue? Sort of, and that's actually just a newly starting, this we called resilience, like, and we don't, scientifically, the answer we don't know. My personal answer is, I believe, and that explains, by the way, a lot about how psychedelics work, is that we have an immune system in our brain. Again, by the way, personal opinion, not scientific Atai opinion, like we have an immune system in the body, and the immune system, in my view, in the brain consists out of three things: faith, purpose, and love. Very cheesy, I know, but if I explain it, like, so faith means any form of belief that there is more to this world than the hard facts around us. And why it's extremely important is because the biggest trauma and fear we all have every day is that somebody we love could die and we could die. So that fear of death, but not just of our own one, even worse, like if you have children, you might know it, like, yeah, you wake up and you're worried about them. Yeah. And fear is obviously one of the nagging things which ultimately can lead to a mental health issue. I think, and it's not a claim if God exists or not, but like any form of spirituality is helping you cope better. Yeah, because it tells you there's a bigger plan, and even if something would happen to people I love, I might see them again. There is a reason. It helps to rationalize, yeah, or to cope with it. Yeah, and this is why I think one of the reasons people who are spiritual or religious are a little bit happier than none. So the second is purpose. If you have to know what is your value in society, how you embedded in it, why you're here when you wake up in the morning, that drives you. Yeah, and the third one, love. I mean, like, you have to have family, community, like really close people around you. Unfortunately, all of these three things, coming to your metaverse question, all of these three things, faith, purpose, and love, is what is massively on the decline at the moment in our world. Like, faith is like at a low point, that people believe in something.
In Toronto, they're turning churches into condos.
Yes,
that's the standard.
Yeah. And I'm not making a pitch for any specific religion, but I think we need it. Yeah. So, but also purpose. Think about it, like the bus driver, the fabric, where the many people. By the way, I also believe always in the wisdom of people. They not just the bus driver cannot tell you exactly how autonomous driving works, but somewhere deep down he knows he's not going to drive the bus in 10 years. Yeah. And that is dissolving his purpose. Yeah. And then these people look around and say, but what's my new purpose? Do I become a rocket engineer? Do I become a whatever? So the world is a hard place for people to find a new place when your existing purpose is dissolved. And then the last one, also love, coming to the metaverse. We are tribalistic animals. We need a close group of people physically around us. And COVID already was a problem because a lot of people were sitting at home alone. They didn't see their friends. They didn't see their parents, their grandparents. Yeah. So we have a generally trend, I think, in the Western world that communities are dissolved, and COVID like accelerated that as well. Yeah. So, and interestingly, I feel on a psychological level, psychedelics are giving you back all three of them. A lot of people come out and have a spiritual experience, faith. A lot of people come out and sort of discover something about themselves where they're like, oh, I want to do this in life. This is my passion. I want to follow that. So it's re-giving you purpose. And actually everybody comes out of psychedelics, I would say, and realizes the value of close personal relationships. Yeah. So
it's almost like where we sit right now. Psychedelics are it's just that portal that just brings you back to what was anchoring us, right? It's almost like it's almost a hack, if you will, but that's probably the wrong word, but it's really,
earlier in life when you're younger, you maybe appreciate certain things more. As you get older, you lose some of these things, and maybe psychedelics could bring you back to.
Totally. No, but psychedelic has also this sort of, if you look at brain scans, whatever, this kind of rejuvenation that sort of, because many things which you want to have and which help you sort of to stay happy and healthy is attributed with younger people. I mean, younger people can also have their issues, but sort of this general openness for the world, the ability, the drive to learn new things, to explore, that is all what psychedelics kind of as a side effect give you back. Sorry, but that was sort of more like the
this is wonderful. So we're coming back to the mental health crisis we're dealing with right now. Why has traditional, the traditional medication, traditional forms of treatment failed so miserably? And how does psychedelics offer hope? Like, how is this the disruptive mechanism where you're ultimately going to get regulators? Everyone's saying, because everyone you talk to says, this has dramatically changed my life for the better. We've got data obviously from Compass, but maybe you can articulate.
But it was just like for like the reason, one of the reasons why the psychedelic renaissance, let's go like that, works now is that today we understand way more about the functioning of the brain, which helps us coming back to the scientific side. So for the first time is not just take Compass or all the other clinical trials Atai is running, not just that we for the first time really with rigorous clinical trials show that these substances work, but we also at the same time understand what they do in our brain, what is happening. In the 50s and 60s, they saw the outcome, but they couldn't explain why, what, because from brain scanning to understanding of our brain wasn't there, and that gives us the solid ground today to sort of bring these therapies forward. But that's also the explanation why for like decades with an S at the end, there was almost no innovation because it was so expensive and we didn't understand it. So practically a lot of old trials literally were like, okay, let's give this person that, and do they feel better? But I can't tell you why. And the FDA hates that. But in general, it's not just a mental health thing. Like the FDA wants to understand not just the outcome, but what is happening. Well, how do you do it? And for many things, people couldn't do that in neuroscience. And this is why in generally, even beyond psychedelics, we see at the moment. So with my investment from Apeiron, we're also investing in Alzheimer's drugs and dementia and stuff like that. And we see, I think that's the final frontier we need to solve. But we see amazing progress again in many fields of neuroscience because we understand it better. So that's the explanation why the last 40 years there practically was zero innovation and why there is so little. By the way, having said that, I want to make the point because a lot of people try to pitch psychedelics, for example, against SSRIs, and I'm more like the brain is a very complex thing, and I think psychedelics are the best by far group of drugs. But we need as many interventions as possible. So SSRIs will play a role in the future, hopefully a way smaller one because they have side effects, whatever. But there is a group of people they help. And there will be other drugs around which are non-psychedelic. I think psychedelics, though, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, will be the absolute centerpiece of any tool set for therapists.
And I think that's a great way to present it, right? Obviously, this whole SSRIs, we got to just, have to be canceled. And then, we move to this dynamic. It really is, it's a balance of these, but the shifting, the tectonic plate shift where this becomes your frontline treatment. And I think that's something right now when we look at what Compass is doing, it's treatment resistance to depression. You're dealing with what SSRIs has failed. Why don't we start with that and then move backwards? Is that what you're proposing? Is that the new world?
But by the way, at the end, if I'm neutral and then I know where it's going, if you let the market decide, so to say. But like by the way, mental health will always be also. By the way, like any disease, you wouldn't say I have cancer and I'm doing a little bit try and error. You go to an oncologist, And the same, like it starts with the therapist, and the therapist. What I want to do with Atai, we want to give as many tools as possible to therapists, and then the therapist can decide what they think is the right thing to start, which is the most likely one to work, and so on. So I don't even want to say like I will not dictate or say like psychedelics should be first line or last point. It's the therapist who says what does actually my patient has. Where does the therapist think this is coming from? And then because even within psychedelics, don't forget that like we have several. We have 6 psychedelic programs, so different ones. And the therapist might say, for this kind of patient, I'm going to start with psilocybin. For the other one, he said, look, maybe we start with SSRIs. And for the third one, he's like, look, we go straight to DMT. Yeah, it's the therapist, and I want to deliver the toolbox to them.
So Christian, just on Atai and how you guys look at this as a platform company, how should an investor think about this? Are we getting a best-in-class approach, and an investor, gets access to the best upcoming therapies available across the spectrum? Maybe you could help us understand the value proposition for an investor to go into a portfolio approach like Atai.
Yeah, so first of all, in generally, I think it's always good because the problem is so big. Sort of, you want meaning my goal is with Atai. Let's start from the goal. Like, I want to build the globally leading mental health company, for practically fighting or curing the biggest problem or group of problems of our time. So that's sort of the big vision we have. By the way, just a side note, because I think I'm as frustrated as every other Atai shareholder who might just watch it. Like, the share price, meaning I don't need to say it, but doesn't reflect that at all. Meaning, but it is biotech, like it's meaning we're trading almost at cash, which is insane. Like, but I truly believe that if markets normalize, if we prove what we believe we will prove, this can be somewhere in a $50 billion company. Because again, size of the problem, and we have the biggest sort of set of sort of potential solutions at hand. So I would say, why not? I believe we do it well, by the way. So beyond sort of having the idea that we were the first one thinking about psychedelics, I think we have assembled the best team in neuroscience, and that is extremely important, because one thing is the substances, and the other thing is you need to be able to move those therapeutics through the sort of FDA requirements. So if I have the best team and if I have the ideas, why not? Like, that's like, because the problem is so big, it's like I want to produce as many solutions as I can. Obviously, for shareholders, again, this gives a lot of upside because it's not a one-trick pony. Again, we have more than 11 programs, and it gives you a downside protection, which we don't even need, I think, because, like, as you know, we had last time, I'm very, very convinced about our programs, because we know kind of they work anecdotally, and we just sort of recreating or proving it now in a very scientific way. However, downside protection is always good, and you get like 11 times the upside.
So Christian, you raised what you guys are doing at Atai makes a ton of sense. And obviously right now you mentioned the market environment for all risk asset classes. Now, I wanted to specifically talk about venture capitalists. They've gone out, prominent venture capitalist firms, they've gone out of their way to sound alarms about the choppy investment landscape ahead, telling their telling their companies, cut costs, get profitable, in the next, get cash flow positive as soon as possible. How would you characterize this investment environment for what psychedelics, which, we obviously all have a passion about and believe that, this is truly something game changing, versus technology as it relates to capital flowing in, right? And why psychedelics, should continue to see money coming in versus, say, some of the tech landscape. You'd be closer to this world than anyone. I just wanted to, what's the case here for psychedelics to continue to get investment dollars all the way from VC to public?
Well, by the way, I don't want to say it's not psychedelics versus tech. Meaning, first of all, and it's sort of the harsh truth, is that the exercise now every company is doing, because the market forces them to. By the way, to be fair, and I'm told that my colleagues at Atai, you should do anyway all the time, because what the market tells you is like, you should be as efficient as possible. And we all get a little bit loose. If money is easy, then you say, oh, I hire one person more here and one person more here, and I do one thing more here. But ultimately, it's always healthy to get a little bit of guys, like, we should do it again. Why not? Like, it's like, we should produce the best return for our shareholders. And the best return is normally the combination of the best outcome with as little investment as possible. Yeah, so it's not, I have lived, I mean, I know I look very young, but like I started
Hey, remember you had that big psychedelic thing on the wall? It's key. Remember you had that big thing with MDMA pills? Like, where is that?
That's at home. So I'm in the office. That's at home. I'm actually was thinking I should get a second one for my office here. So that's yeah.
That was very cool and unique.
Yeah, at my house. So but having said so it's so I've gone through these cycles 3-4 times. Meaning I started in 1999. Yeah, then you had the .com crash, and then 2008, and then in Europe 2012, and then like that. So happened a lot. Yeah. What I can tell you, it's a healthy exercise, and good companies will come out even better. Yeah. So where does the money go? Meaning, I think what is a problem, let's start there, is if companies are not funded well. Yeah. And there, Atai is sort of the very positive outlier. Yeah. We have around 350 million cash. Yeah. Then we have a stake in Compass, which we tendency would most likely rather increase, but like we definitely don't want to sell, but like it's still there. Yeah. It's like, it's more than 100 million. Yeah. So by the way, that means the net value of Atai is just like 200 million at the moment or something, which shows you the insanity of the valuation. But we are well funded for years to come. Yeah. Sort of. And unfortunately, I think there are a lot of psychedelic companies who are not well funded. And for them, it's going to be hard this year, because if you need to raise this year, it is a problem. Yeah. Having said that, why are so many, especially psychedelic companies, not well funded? Yeah, that is a little bit the critical view I have, because I don't even like, and I know you have a whole psychedelics conference, yeah, but I don't even like that term, the psychedelic industry, yeah, because I think if I look at what is medically really viable, Atai and Compass together as one family, I think we capture the vast majority. I don't want to put a number on it, but it's maybe 80%, 90%. Why? Not because we're so special. We started early. We started 2 years before anybody else in the world was thinking about commercializing psychedelics. Yeah. So we had 2 years of time and money, and we're not dumb, where we were able to look at everything. By the way, we got everything almost for free, because nobody thought ever this psychedelic renaissance could happen again. So if there is something Atai or Compass are not doing, there is a reason why we're not doing it. It's because you can't really believe we looked at everything. Yeah. So might we have made a mistake and forgot something and somebody else picked it up? Yes. Yeah. But like overly, I would say everything which is again commercially viable, we have, and then the rest is small, maybe satellites around us. Yeah. That excludes, by the way, service providers, because there will be clinic things, there will be maybe tech-enabled stuff working with what we bring to market. But in the drug development space, yeah, I would say we captured a lot. That's the message. The second message was always that I told everybody, even the ones who who say, oh, I found a niche you don't do. I was like, great for you. Yeah. Don't forget how expensive that is. No, it's like you need not just millions, you need millions and millions. Yeah. And sort of, and that correlates, by the way, with the quality of your management. There is a reason positive where I can be proud of, like why Compass and Atai, I mean, Compass also has several hundred billion cash. Yeah, why Compass and Atai have been able to raise, because everything I just told you is not my wishful thinking. It's a fact, and investors were appreciating that. And this is why they were rewarding us, with capital. Yeah, so I think, and I actually try a little bit to almost position Atai and Compass apart from what some people call the psychedelic sector, because I think that what people call the psychedelic sector will go through very rough times, because A, companies are not really funded, and B, some of them should have maybe not ever been funded at the first place, and definitely it's going to be impossible to fund them now. Yeah, so I think there will be choppy times ahead for the ones, again, who maybe at least service is the wrong word, like there was the English word, like who where it's like logical that it's happening. Yeah, and the substance is missing. Yeah. So I want to be, actually Atai is a biotech company. So my sort of peer group is biotech. I think we are a very special biotech company. I think we sort of, both from the size of our programs, from the mission, from the group of diseases we target, so we are So we are a very good, very special biotech company, but that's sort of the right peer group, if that makes sense.
No, so it's super helpful, right? And I think you highlighted some key points, right? If you don't have that war chest, why don't you have it? A, like there's some thinking around that, and then B, just everything that goes around that, the IP, the bear, like there really is, there's some key elements here that position Atai, and you've got a portfolio here. Very helpful discussion, Christian. I can't thank you enough. Maybe just some final leaving thoughts. Always great to chat on these topics, and we'll obviously do it again next Psychedelics Con. But please make final takeaways.
On what?
On life in general, Atai.
On life, on religion, on psychedelics.
No, just where should, in terms of Atai, what are the key things we should look forward to as an investor? Lots of things, obviously, as a portfolio. You guys, as a portfolio company, there's lots of moving parts. Are there a couple specific items that investors should pay closer attention to among all the different drugs within your portfolio?
Okay, so first of all, I think one thing generally which is sort of is true for all the high quality biotechs, for all the ways. I deeply believe in biotech. Yeah, I think actually I dare to say that I believe that over the next 10 years, in the 2020s, biotech will be, and it doesn't look at the moment, but I believe will be the #1 asset class, because it does produce, what we all ultimately want, health. And if you look around, there was one interesting thing I saw on Twitter some days ago. Some celebrity was asking his followers, and he had millions of followers, so it was kind of representative. It was like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be 80 and a billionaire, or 20 and broke? And all of his followers said 20 and broke. And by the way, I would say that as well. So what does it mean? It means at the very end, you would give all your money to be happy and healthy. That's what you really want. Yeah. So, and that is what the biotech industry, I'm really making the pitch for the entire industry, is producing. 2 days ago, there was this unbelievably good GSK trial. I don't know if you saw it. I think it was 16 patients, late stage colon cancer.
Oh, they all
100% were cured. 100%, meaning
Wow.
This should be a headline everywhere, because that shows we actually entering the golden age of biotech. Yeah, and I think biotech as a whole, is one of the biggest investment opportunities at the moment. If we have that call again, give it in 2 years with a little bit of distance, we will look back on the high quality biotech stocks, and I definitely believe Atai is one of them. And we say, how could we not buy more? This is I think it's one of the biggest you get. And I looked at 20 of them because I'm buying here. And there are 20, 30 unbelievably good names who are almost trading at cash. So you get something for free, which potentially cures cancer, cures depression, cures Alzheimer's. And you're like that, or let me use Atai again. Again, we have more than 11 programs. If one of them, and I believe we have a chance that all of them will be successful. If one of them is successful, interest rates can be wherever they are. They can be at 10%. They won't, by the way. I'm a believer. They will not go up still. I believe that because the world can't cope with high interest rates, but other topic. But hypothetically, if interest rates are at 10%, a drug which significantly improves or even cures depression is always worth billions, full stop.
It's irrelevant.
So this is how you should look at Atai and on the entire biotech industry. And we're gonna have some very, very important readouts. Notably, the most important one this year is end of the year on R-ketamine. In a normal biotech world, I would say if the readout is doing what we expect and hope to do, the stock should double and triple. Let's see how the market is. Again, stocks are at the moment very dependent on the market, but I do think we're somewhere at the bottom. That's what I want to say.
Christian, thank you so much, man.
That's
a fantastic discussion. Great way to end off Grizzle Psychedelics Con. Guys, this is our third iteration of it. Looking forward to doing it again in November. Christian, always great insights, and hopefully the choppy waters we've seen through most of them. We'll see. Markets markets will do what they do, but I really appreciate all the insight, color for specifically for psychedelics investors who see this as a very valuable pathway to the future. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thanks for having me. Happy to do it again.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, can you believe it, everyone? That wraps up Psychedelics Con. But now I have to say, if you learn something in this conference, that's what Grizzle does every day.
Yep.
So if you go to grizzle.com/subscribe, you'll get all our best thought pieces on psychedelics, cannabis, whatever it is. But don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick lunch break. And then we got the big show. Cannabis Con is coming back at 1 p.m. Eastern. Don't go anywhere.